What's up, investors? This is Chase Thompson here, coming to you live. It seems like I'm always coming to you live from my car. Apologies. Just got done recording a fantastic episode with Mr. Robert Woods. We talk about multiple different tax issues across multiple different states. We talk about using a drone for real estate photography and video. We talk about the reason why I'm shooting this on an iPhone right now. Hint, hint, my computer gave up on me, though technically not its own fault. Maybe Apple, if you're watching this, it was definitely the computer's fault. Anyway, be sure to check out this week's episode right now.
Okay, you ready to roll? Wonderful. I'm super glad that I was already recording that, though I don't think it'll make it into the show. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome.
First, seconds, performing, non-performing? What the f***? Note buyers, when it seems like you're in this business alone, know Chase, Robert, and the rest of their tribe are at it every week. They're bringing updates from their own note businesses as they work to find, fund, and finish deals. Follow along as they share their grassroots education with you, tuition free. If you'd like to know more about what they do and to download the entire back catalog, check out NoteMBA.com. Now, here are your hosts, Chase Thompson and Robert Woods.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Note MBA podcast, your home for note investing on iTunes. I am Chase Thompson, joined as always by Mr. Robert Woods. Mr. Woods, what is up?
Drinking some nice hot tea in the afternoon here, since I'm on my my mission right now.
On your mission? Is this
my mission?
Has it come from on high? What do you mean?
I'm drying up. I'm drying up.
Oh, right. We talked about it last week.
Sauce.
Right.
I'm off the sauce. I'm on the wagon.
Oh, so tea's the replacement. That's the, they talk about that when it comes to habits, right? Like the trigger, you've got the reward and you've got, that type of stuff. So you've replaced, I like it. I like where this is going.
What was cool, actually, I was hanging out with my buddy, and this whole accountability thing is it just goes to show like how enforceable it is. But we were talking about it, and we were going through some cookbooks. He got me, by the way, there's this Thug Kitchen cookbook. It sounds crazy, and there's an outrageous amount of expletives in it if you actually buy it. But it's vegan, healthy food, and it's just this awesome cookbook. So my buddy Eric, the one I've got this bet with, which now we've kind of agreed it's not even a bet. It's just kind of like we're just doing it. It's not even a big deal anymore. It's more for attention than anything else at this point, because I'm like, you shouldn't really be patting yourself on the back for going 30 days without alcohol. But you should. But you should at the same time. Most people can't go 30 days without quitting something. They're like, well, we're kind of friends. We get along well. Every now and again we fight, but we always make up. That's my relationship with alcohol. Like craft beer. I guess that's the thing. So anyway, my trainer at the gym is happy about it. I'm happy about it. I think it's a good thing to have started also in month 2, as we were talking about the fat tax and people, getting back off, their goals. So it's a new baby goal, 8.25% of the year. It's a baby goal.
I like it. Not to pat yourself on the back, not to pat ourselves on the back. But I didn't see too many people talking about the revisiting of, right? We touched base a little bit on the revisiting of the goals, the fat tax stuff last episode. And just, in the past 2 days, I've seen a bunch of people kind of jump on. So I'm just like, hey, man, I was glad we were a little ahead of the curve on that one. I'm very excited about it. Oh my gosh, I love it. So drinking your tea, getting ready. Let's have a seat. So you've had I'm
standing and dancing right now. I'm actually in the room doing a little arm wave thing. I'd look like a hippie on the beach in Hawaii right now.
For those
totally
that don't
sober,
know,
by the way, this is like my natural state these days.
Look, man, I'm high on life. I don't know what you want from me. For those that don't know, we record all of the shows as often as possible standing to bring a ton of energy to the show. And I think it helps in a tremendous way. So it's just like my subtle way of being like, when I do get to like plan my own office out here, I'm going to have a standing desk. I think it is ultimately far more, energy productive. I just feel more, feel like I'm bringing a little bit more energy to the table when I'm standing. So we were going to do some recording earlier. I had an appointment. You had a tax issue. Do you want to get started there? Do you want to check some of these other things off the list? What's going on?
I think, well, we can start with it because it solved itself very fantastically.
Okay.
It's one of those statements of saying Cook County strikes again. You know, we talk about Chicago. Let me read from the bottom of this actual thing because it sounds kind of funny. So I have a property I just bought the note on, and I got a letter from the borrower, and he's like, dude, these taxes payments are due on the 15th. Of course, I'm busy. I misread it. I freaked out and thought they were due today. But at the bottom of it, the top of the form, it says, note, this original estimate must be returned at the time of payment. Estimate of costs of redemption for the annual sale. So essentially, if these taxes didn't get paid tomorrow, property goes bye-bye, it disappears. Irresponsible note investor for not paying attention to your taxes, which nobody wants to be the guy that's lost a property taxes. Knock on wood. I'm knocking on wood everywhere. Haven't lost a property to tax sale yet. Don't have any intentions of doing it. But this morning, I'd called my attorney to say, hey, can I get some help? I was on hold with Cook County for 2 hours before I started going through like my Rolodex at the law firm and called all the paralegals and got a hold of one who got a hold of the partner. I forgot that my main contact, my main attorney, is out on maternity leave. So I wired the money to them, and the paralegal actually is texting me from her cell phone that she's walking over to the courthouse to go pay the tax payment right now because it essentially has to be paid in person, which is so 1970s, crazy, ridiculous that there's not a system I can go online and just pay it with a credit card and take some ridiculous like 3.5% fee or something. The fact that you have to go inside is just kind of a nightmare. Also, my feet are firmly planted in Orlando right now, and it was a little bit of a headache. So what's going to be interesting, though, it avoided me, which everybody's going to cringe when I say this. I was going to just wire the money to the borrower. Now, this is the borrower that's months behind on making his payments and $8,700 behind on his taxes. And I was just going to wire it into his bank account and have him go pay it. I'm in just an uber trusting mood with this gentleman. We've built up a really good rapport. Anyway, so he's supposed to get a bonus check tomorrow from work. And actually, he forwarded me the letter from his management and the amount that he was getting. So he's just going to actually cut me a check back. And that way we don't have to deal with anything. It's a little, it's not quite above board, but it's not below board. We're just going to make it a wash.
Okay, so a couple of things to address there. Number one, I personally feel like the way that we produce this show, we get together, we kind of get everything out on a piece of paper. I feel like if we were doing a radio show on a daily basis, we would kind of have this same show rundown, right? You mentioned, let's talk a little bit about a tax situation happening up in Chicago, Cook County, and I wrote next to it, difficult ? Because I wanted to address that to just kind of get your stance on that whole process up there, and you went ahead and answered the question before I even got a chance to ask. It hasn't been the most difficult you've ever had to deal with, is it? Having to pay in person is obviously a big pain and all that kind of stuff, but aside from that,
it was like how they. Projects grow in size and importance the closer to the deadline. Yeah. And I thought it needed to be paid today. Mm-hmm. So I was, of course, like, wait a second, I just wired $75,000 for this note. I don't want to lose it. So where do I need to spend this extra $9,000 of insurance money actually at?
Sure.
But what's interesting too, is I'm paying a paralegal to walk from their office down to the courthouse, and she had to go get a check. So I'm curious what this is going to cost on the back end. I'm going to get a bill for it. It's not like they're doing it out of the kindness of their heart, but it's cheaper than me having flown up to Chicago and had to deal with it myself. And there really wasn't necessarily a better way to handle the situation. So using my attorney's office as a conduit has actually been now one of those things I can kind of press the easy button going forward. Now, I know the easy button is going to cost me money, right? Every time you press that button, you're giving a little bit of something away. And what I'll be paying for paralegal fees or them cutting the check and everything else, plus the wiring fees. But it's also kind of a relief now to know that I now know the process with my law firm there to get them to go make my tax payments for me, and that they'll look it up and they'll pull everything and make sure it's I's are dotted and T's are crossed for me.
I think that is fantastic. Yeah, she's not going to go like run out and be like, hey, I got to get a bagel and then also go pay your tax bill for you. But essentially, like you said, having that dream team, having those just that it's almost like support staff, right? Where you're investing as often as possible, having that opportunity is fantastic. Now, the other thing I wanted to address was you mentioned having your feet firmly planted on the ground in Orlando. Not so much the case just a couple days ago when they were firmly planted in the snow in Ohio. What?
Ooh, yeah, I went up to Cleveland.
Very nice.
It was a multi-step project. It was good. Well, I went up there to sign the closing documents for that nightmare rental property I had. And I'm happy I got rid of it. We talk about deals. Everybody's trying to maximize returns. I know I left money on the table. There is no questions asked whatsoever. But after I've gone through my rundown on the deal, we made a great return for the time period that we had it. And getting out of the deal, getting access to the capital, and getting rid of that property manager has been the best thing that could have happened. What was funny is we just got an email yesterday from the property manager. The tenant hadn't paid rent for like the last 2 months. And apparently they told the property manager that they had paid it to us. And so she was like, well, I need my $300 management fee. And I was like, you're not going to get that from me. I was like, you get a management fee when you collect rent and do the job you're supposed to do. And they didn't pay the rent to me. So good luck. Have a good day. Anyway, I also ended up in Cleveland during that trip, to what you were talking about when it started snowing, to go do a little inspecting on some properties that we took back. They went from notes through foreclosure, came back as REOs, and we remodeled them. And I didn't have... Well, actually, I did not enact my normal system of writing up a scope of work and getting the bids done. I put it out to a contractor that I built a relationship with through another investor who was basically, oh, no, don't worry about it. You can trust them. They'll take care of it. They'll handle everything. I'm like, all right. It came from a good source. I said, why not? We're very hesitant to refer people. And we also, as we've said, there's only been one time I've bashed a company by their name on this podcast, and that was Hayes Property Management in Canton, Ohio. If anybody was curious if they'd forgotten, missed that episode, or were a little concerned about another company I just personally don't recommend. We're over that one. Water under the bridge, right, buddy?
Indeed, no worries. We've clearly addressed it, and we know a decent amount of people that invest there and that listen to the show. So I think that the message has been accurately and sufficiently amplified, which is very
perfect.
Good.
So with that,
with that,
I was up there on a referral, which this thing I had just mentioned a second ago was not a referral or recommendation or anything of the sorts. And I got up there, I went and looked at my properties, and I just wasn't happy with the quality of the remodel work. There were some things, and I looked at the property and I did my walkthrough, and one of the guys that works for me has been up there. And I looked at the windows. And when it's your money and your property, you look at things differently. And there's paint on the window. And I looked at the contractor, and I was like, you guys painted, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I didn't pay you to paint the windows. Oh, that's the cleaners should take care of that. And I'm like, well, why don't you send the cleaners in here? Well, we don't do that. And I was like, then you need to learn how to paint. And I walked through the property, and there wasn't, a quality of workmanship that I would have liked to have seen. And I was actually disappointed. I don't feel like I got ripped off. I didn't lose a ton of money. It just wasn't really quality work. And I guess I had not conveyed kind of my attitude on converting, rental properties into rental units for myself. We're like, we over improve most things. And I get it. We spend too much money. We're lowering our yield, but we create a nicer environment, a better home, something that I would be proud to walk into if I was in that type of position and renting from myself. And I walked into this property, and to be honest, there was nothing about it that would have made me proud. So we fast forward, we go through the day, we walking through the property and looking at some light fixtures that didn't get changed. And I got the foreman and the contractor there, and the foreman's like, oh, well, we didn't have a lighting package in this property. Okay, so that we don't change that. And there were a couple of those things that came up, and he's trying to get a final payment out of me. And I'm like, well, let me do this because I had the scope of work you made for me, and here's my contract. And it says there's a lighting package, and it says this, and you're trying to charge me extra. Like, what's going on? And it just showed how not unorganized, but just lack of focus and lack of caring on these projects from the main contractor, which was discouraging because I have another contractor that I work with in a different market whose name I will never give out because he's so good. I just want to keep him busy with my work. That it's the night and day difference was just so disappointing. And it wasn't like I got such a good deal. Like I was like a $5,000, cleanup that should have cost me $8,000 or something. I ended up spending almost $20,000 on this partial remodel. And it's, the value of going to look at your properties could not be more emphasized from this trip than any other time I talk about it. And I mean that in a couple different ways. There are times where I go out and I buy notes on deals that I haven't seen. But if I did that, I'm either out there pretty quickly afterwards to go look at it, or I was out there before we purchased it, or my JV investors have seen me at the property with some pictures or some updates. It's not just kind of floating around. And I think it leaves you a huge room for either contractors taking advantage of situations, any type of vandalism, which if you just leave your properties there and you're not visiting them, the neighbors don't know what's going on, you're not talking to people in the area, that's going to happen. Or just neglecting your deals and not getting out there and getting in front of them, which I think happens more than a lot of people would admit if they had to, put on a little lie detector and talk about how actively they're managing some of their deals.
Mm-hmm. And
so going up there was worth the money. It cost me about $1,000. But the other thing that came out of it, I did a little due diligence on a couple other deals. We've got a property that's going to auction in 2 weeks, where the realtor had given us a value of like $95,000 as is, and then $130,000 retail. And I walked in the property and I'm like, there's $45,000 worth of work here. There's no way those numbers are right. Which getting up there and doing that, I believe is going to save me from having to put $20,000 or $30,000 into the property just to get rid of it. And we're going to market it to third parties and try to hopefully get it sold at the foreclosure auction, which is in Ohio, which we'll talk about that other deal regarding my Ohio hiccup with the foreclosure auctions. And people that have done a lot of Ohio stuff where it has gone third party are just going to laugh and say, oh, I knew that, Robby. Silly. So my Florida foreclosures and all the other Ohio ones I'd had have all come back REO. And however my attorney had done the filing, I got, I'd advance a lot of money a couple of times. One time it was $6,000. One time it was a $10,000 check. Another was a $15,000 check. And the money always came back to me. Florida here, if it sells for $111,000, you get a check for $111,000. That's minus some of the fees if that's what's necessary. So I had this deal that we put up in Ohio. Chase had put together a landing page for it, and we'd done a little bit of marketing online. And it sold third party, and I was ecstatic. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to bring back a little over $20,000, and we'll just reinvest the money. We'll walk away with a $1,500 loss, no big deal. Well, in Ohio, if a foreclosure goes third party, that third party receives title to that property free and clear, meaning the tax balance prorated to the date of the sale is taken out of the proceeds to whomever held the mortgage, whoever the foreclosing entity was. And this one foreclosure that we had a couple months ago, I was trying to find out when the check was showing up, and I looked at it, and there's a $4,300 back tax balance that was taken out of the proceeds from the sale. And I was sitting there going, what? What happened? I didn't. And I wrote my attorney a letter. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like, this is how it happens. You didn't know that? And I'm like, no, every time we've done a foreclosure, it comes back. And he's like, oh, well, if you're the foreclosing party, you have the option to either pay it at the sale and have the money taken out of that check you'd advanced, or it just gets returned to you and you're still liable for the taxes, which completely blew my mind. But lesson learned. This time it cost me $4,300. Small vacation. That's not really a small vacation. That's a nice vacation.
That's a pretty nice vacation.
Anyway,
I was going to say.
It was a learning lesson.
Yes. So just as a quick aside, are we going to do a similar outreach that we did on that last one for the new one that's coming up?
We are going to do that. I actually have some pictures ready to go. Should have actually had more, but I don't. It's a shame. Irresponsible Robby forgot that I was going to need to market it. And this is the one property I really didn't take many pictures of. Whoops. Anyway, so we'll market it. We'll put the address out there. Hopefully we can get it to sell third party and we get the money back. On this one, it's a great deal too because we don't have a really high collectible balance. Our collectible balance is somewhere in the low 70s. And I think the appraisal came in at 102 or 103,000. And in Ohio, you've got to sell for at least 2/3. Mm-hmm. So we would obviously either make that our minimum bid and bring it back REO. But hopefully we can get it sold $71,000 and walk away, take the money and go put it back and do another deal.
Yeah, very cool. A couple of things. Speaking of Facebook, we will link these up in the show notes because clearly we can't give you all of the greatness that was these two fantastically short video clips with Mr. Woods over this past week. One where he's going fishing for deals and another one where he's hitting doubles. I loved these two short little clips. We need more of these in our lives, I think. And you shared these on Facebook. They're just fantastic. Were those taken in Florida? Were those up there? Like, where were those done? Just so that
those were in Florida.
Okay. On
a JV deal we've got, and it was an interesting one. It was there's an expletive at the end, but we had to pay some cut that stuff money. Stuff, air quotes around stuff. Cut that stuff out money. Mm-hmm. And the litigation on it was outrageous. I think we've got almost a $10,000 litigation bill.
Wow.
But had we not paid the extra $2,500, big shout out to Harris Howard, who is my attorney down in South Florida, who instead of going back and forth with this numbskull of an opposing counsel, picked up the phone and just said, hey, can we settle this? Let's quit with this nonsense. Because I was discussing with him, if we had to reschedule the court date or it went to appeals, it was going to be another 3 or 4 months plus legal fees. And that was going to eat like the bulk of all of our profit that was going to be in the deal. Mm-hmm. But what was glorious about it, we just got down there and the property's vacant, not in bad condition. I put a scope of work together. Old Jeff Conway down there in Spring Hill, Florida, is going to send some of his guys to take a look at it and see about getting me some numbers. The comps in the neighborhood don't look bad. So I'm happy about this one. It worked out well, but it was this was one of those ones where we just had this numbskull on the other side of the fence, spending legal bills and churning out just nonsense. It was never going to have a legal defense. It was literally just like, let's drag it out and see how much money we can either get or cost ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the point I want to emphasize on this is I've seen so many people sit in classes or hear somebody say, oh, I can foreclose for $2,500. And I'm just like, yeah, buddy, you can. And it happens when things go perfect. And no one sneezes, and the wind doesn't blow above 8 miles an hour from the northwest on a Tuesday. Like, great, then you can do it. But just make sure if you're getting into the space and you don't have access to easy extra capital, or you've potentially underfunded a deal, just be careful, because that's a real thing that can happen. Make sure you're not overextending yourself when you're going to purchase some of these notes or anything else. You know, I've seen more and more people where part of the conversation is they're getting stuck in deals and deals aren't moving because they don't have the capital to go do a remodel. And we just ran a report the other day, and we've got almost $500,000 out right now simply covering remodel expenses on joint venture deals right now. And that's a ton of money. That's money that could be in deals and churning and working. But you also need to know that you need to have access to that kind of capital on the sideline if you're going to start growing your portfolio. And the only way you may be able to salvage a profit from a deal is by putting another $20,000 into it. Now, there are times where obviously stepping away from it and not putting another penny into it is the best idea. But I think one of the good things to highlight on this particular deal down in Florida, you make sure you've got access to that extra money. I see people wanting to buy a $15,000 or $20,000 note, and that's like the top of their ceiling. If you end up with $10,000 in legal bills on that, what are you doing if you have no more capital? So think through some of those things as you're looking towards some of your first notes for the newer buyers, we would say.
Right, yeah, essentially. And And we've talked about that multiple times. It comes through a form of making sure you're funding the deals appropriately. And then, of course, in the conversations you have with people, potentially you, I say you, the collective you, right, on how much money you have in your own reserves, right? So some people, when they get into, say, real estate investing, note investing, whatever the case may be, they've got their own sideline capital, right? And they want to go execute on some deals, be able to do some of those deals and things like that. And I'm all for that, right? Get in there, get your hands messy, be able to learn and kind of do what you need to do. But on the other side of that, make sure you've also got some of that liquid ready to go in circumstances like what you're just got done talking about, right? If you go use all of your capital, right, to go buy XYZ deals and they're funded and what have you, and then you start bringing in those, a JV partner here or there, whatever the case may be, and then you come into a scenario where now you're not capitalized properly, you can really find yourself in a problem situation. And not even in situations where necessarily the deal is going to be stretched out, like you were just mentioning. But at the very start and the very head of this episode, we talked about a tax situation that you just ran into. Now, granted, you thought it was due today and some other things like that. But let's say you do get into a deal where all of a sudden there's a tax bill that's due, and it is a problem, and it is a couple $1,000s or whatever the case may be. And if you can't get in there and appropriately handle it and find the money to make that happen, you could really find yourself in a bad situation. And that's not even a fix and flip, scenario. That's paying off due taxes. You know what I mean? So it's a major component of the business.
That it is, without question.
Yeah.
So let's change it up. Speaking of hiccups with taxes and bills, I heard you got a new computer.
Yes. So if you can hear this show, if you are currently within the sound of mine or Mr. Woods' voice, lucky you. So essentially, when I bought my laptop I was using as of yesterday at 8:20 in the morning, I had taken it to the Apple Store a couple of times. I'm not saying it's a lemon, but it definitely had some issues that were historically involved with this laptop. However, spilling a little bit of water on it is not a way to clean out the issues that your computer might be having. Basically what I'm saying is I know we host this on iTunes, but hopefully Apple isn't listening. They're currently servicing my old laptop to see if it is salvageable in its entirety. Like, I'm not sure they're even going to be able to get the hard drive off this thing and actually have any serviceable data reclaimed. So this is a story of making sure you back up your information properly. There's a ton of stuff that we do, obviously, with docs and all of these types of things. Make sure you have executed multiple different, if not at least one form of backup, Dropbox, Carbonite, an actual external backup. I'll actually link up in the show notes the backup that I use. It's fantastic. It's super cheap on Amazon. You should check it out. That's an actual external hard drive that I have on with me all the time. But if you are listening to this show, that means, I figured out how to get all of my audio dissemination software working again and everything else. So that's very good. And Apple, if you're listening, please stop. So that way you fix my computer based off of what was wrong with it originally and not the cup of water. But I do have what is essentially
Sneaky. I get what you just said.
Yes. I essentially have a loaner computer from them, which they don't actually give out. What they do is they have this really generous return policy where they basically were like, buy one, and then whenever your computer's done, if we give it back to you and everything's fine, then good to go. You just return this for like full return. If not, then we kind of address it basically off of that. So I have a very expensive, technically paid for loaner that might be going back to them. We'll see how that all shifts out, which is a lot of fun. Computer woes are always good times. But what it gave me an opportunity to do, because I had a webinar I had to be a part of last night, post all of my computer catching on fire, I essentially had an opportunity to revisit some marketing and sales strategies and things like that I had way back in the coffers. And one of them I wanted to bring up on the show because I've actually talked about it a couple of times over the past 2 weeks with different investors in person, phone calls, like I said, different webinars and other stuff. And it was actually featured. This isn't the first time I'd heard of it, but it was actually featured in the book, The Conversion Code, with author Chris Smith, who we had on the show. If you have not checked out that episode, be sure to check it out. We'll link it up in the show notes. But It's this technique he calls DDT, which is a dig deep technique, right? He likes to say that I believe it was the person either at Quicken Loans or whoever his boss was basically would say, dig deep or go to sleep, essentially, which is this notion of digging deep with your clients, prospects, leads, different things like that, or essentially go to sleep, you're out of business, right? And it's this idea that you need to be asking better questions when you're interacting with people. In our case, these will be people that might be potential investors with you, sources for deals, things like that. You need to be asking more and better questions, because then that gets you to being in a power position, as it were, when it comes time to close. And a lot of people don't like to use these strong, I'll say alpha, but I just mean to say, like, a lot of people don't like talk about, like, I'm going to go close this JV investor. Like, that's what you're doing, right? Like, essentially, call it what you want. They're partnering with you, whatever. You still have to close them, right? You still have to get them to commit, and you still want them to be able to, work with you and understand the process, all that other stuff. So essentially, it's this idea of asking better and more important questions to get a better understanding of their needs, if it's even a good fit for them to be investing with you. In this case, he talks about it from a real estate sales perspective of like an agent or something like that. But some of the questions that he actually goes through in the book are
Did
things
you come
like,
back from that trip down the hallway? You just went, whoa.
Oh, I had to pick up the book. I have it all highlighted. It's crazy. I have highlights and stuff all over this book. But essentially, I had it earmarked for this particular show here. Anyway, he's got questions like, how long have you been researching X, right? Like, so if someone is just learning about note investing, or they recently stumbled upon you because of your website or whatever, how long have you been researching this? Just to get an idea of how much they might or might not know from a question answering perspective, right? Have you ever purchased anything like this before? So in our case, you could simply start asking questions like, what have you invested in before? How has that worked out for you? What type of rates of return have you been experiencing in the past? What have been some issues that you've encountered? Just really figuring out what it is that they've done before, where they're coming from, where they're looking to go. He actually tells a story. I don't remember if it's in the book or not, or if it's just when he and I were... Anyway, long story short, he tells a story about when he was doing inside sales for Quicken Loans, where somebody called to get a home equity line, right? He was doing, he was coaching a new person that was on the phones there at Quicken Loans. And the lady said, yeah, I'd like to get this cash out refinance or HELOC, whatever the case was, for a new deck. We want to put in a new deck. And this lady that he was training, who was on the call with her, said, essentially, oh, great, 50,000 for a new deck. That's great. Or, how much do you want? And she said 50,000. And she's like, oh, cool, 50,000 for a deck. Can you please verify your? And she just kind of like blew right past what all this was for, right? He's like, if this were me on the call, I would have been like, whoa, wait. Are you building this deck out of platinum? Why do you need 50 grand for a deck? What is it like? Just to dive in, get a little bit more human, obviously, with this client to potentially get them closed and things like that. And it became obvious to him at this time that a lot of people don't do that. They don't do this one particular thing. And for us and what we do, whether it comes to JV partners or sourcing, what you get is an opportunity to figure out where it is they're going and figure out what their goals are going to be and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes time that you want to know if they want to invest with you, you can just say, you can tie them down with these things that they've already told you. And again, this all sounds very Glengarry Glen Ross, very boiler room type language, but that's essentially what you're doing, right? You just want to know, are they in or are they out, right? And you can say, well, you mentioned you invested in this before, and these are some of the issues that you encountered, or these were the rates of return. You can really start to use their own language, get them to agree with you on some particular aspects of what's happening, and help them understand why you are the best person to work with regarding things like investing, the retirement income, self-directed IRA money, stuff like this. It is a quintessential component to being the person they decide to go with, as opposed to just their money continuing sitting on the sidelines and you complaining about not having any JV money, essentially. And this is where I see a lot of people mix it up and mess up.
Well, one of the things I like about that the most, though, is if you do take the time to ask these questions and develop it, you can also honestly look at the person and just say, hey, we're not a good fit.
Yeah, totally.
Save yourself, I mean, you take a check from somebody that's over six figures, you're dating. You're in a relationship.
You're almost putting a ring on it. it's almost there.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. Listen now, it's 2017. You ain't got to put a ring on it. Don't get crazy, Chase.
No, but you're right.
You in Texas do things right, but over in the city.
Gosh.
Over in the city here.
Listen. These 6-figure checks, not a Tinder hookup, is what you're saying. Your point is well taken. Your point is well taken. It is important to make sure that they're the right fit for you. You're the right fit for them. Not every dollar that can potentially be invested with you is worth taking. Is what you're saying, and that's 100% true.
We've turned down a lot of money.
Yes. But there's been some very interesting exchanges regarding that.
Some of the best deals we've done are the ones I've been like, I'm not going to be able to take any money from this person.
Yeah.
There's no way. I'd slit my wrists.
There's just no way.
I would never do that, by the way. This is not a call for help or a cry for help, everybody. I'm okay. We'll not do that.
So really quickly, we've got some other things on the list. I think we can push those to next week because I really want to dive in deep with them. And it's been a decent sized show thus far for our athletic friends out there that like to listen to the show while they work out. You've had a decent workout. One thing I wanted to mention is on Facebook, along with those videos, you had some sweet drone footage, which I thought was an interesting aspect to be adding to the business, and I really enjoyed. And I want to make sure, if at all possible, you have some.
You tell people to get the insurance. Get the insurance, people.
Yes.
I put it into a tree this weekend.
You did. You mentioned. I look. I got my own electronic woes. I wasn't gonna call you on the carpet on it.
No, it was okay because it was actually. It makes for a good story. I'm gonna let you ask your question, but I was doing a fadeaway shot. And it looked awesome, but I was looking at the screen on my phone, not at the actual drone. And I was just like so happy with how good the video looked and patting myself on the back. And my buddies were like, hey, treat.
Boom.
And then you just see it smash. It was still on. So I was able to take a picture of like the last shot, which is just this upside down shot of shingles. But what was funny, I got the maintenance guy for my condo, because our back side of our condos are gigantic because we all have vaulted ceilings. So like going up to the third floor is just outrageously high. And the two maintenance guys they got the ladder, but you could tell they were like, I looked like, is the adult version of the 8-year-old. It's like, I got my kite stuck in a tree. Can you help me? And they take the ladder out and they put it up, they lean it against the building, and the one of the maintenance guys, he's an older guy. He's got to be in his early 60s, and he's just like this. He's got this tough old guy, but just smile and crazy heart. And he's like 5'3", but he leans the ladder up, and then you just kind of see him look at me, and without saying a word, his eyes essentially said, "All right, boy, we got the ladder. You go up it." So I climbed up and got the drone and came back down. Thankfully, we have insurance, so we'll get another one. But what were you going to say about the drone shots?
No, first of all, I love that. The adult version, if I got my kite stuck in a tree, is fantastic. I was going to say, I had a great conversation. We mentioned it last time, a couple of charities that are involved with some fellow note investors that we know. Had a conversation this morning with one of the guys that heads up Children's First, which is something you're going to be headed out to go do, which is really cool. And I had asked him, I was like, hey, what's going to be happening out there? And he kind of gave me a rundown of what you guys are going to be going through. And I was just going to say, some of the tasks, some of the things that you guys are going to be doing up there would be really great. Snag some of that stuff to kind of bring some stories back. It's going to be really neat. So I was like, oh man, it'd be so awesome. And then I remembered that you either put it into a tree or got it stuck on a building. And I'm like, oh, maybe he won't be able to get that. I did both,
as a matter of fact, overachieving.
So I was going to say, we need some more of these great, shots for the Facebook page, stuff like that. Let people know what we're up to doing, even when we're not just down in Florida, up in Ohio, different places like that. But also when, you're down in Haiti. So I just was like, oh, this would be fantastic. And I told him to remind you to get some good shots, which of course you talked about not getting enough good shots for a Facebook property. So it'll be good, a good little decent reminder for you to get that done. That's fantastic.
I like it.
Yeah.
So we got some deal stuff to talk about next week.
Yep. We got some deal stuff going on. Yep.
Deceased. I have a trifecta of deceased relatives, but they're turning into good stories. People having houses for 40 plus years in their family and wanting to keep them. So And I'm stoked to add 3. I need these 3 reperforming because it would be a nice, juicy. I mean, it's 2 mortgage payments a month, so I'd be happy about that.
That sounds fantastic. So deal chatter next week for sure. Deceased borrowers. I don't know what it's for, but I would love to know. We might have already talked about it on the show, but right before we hit record, you were like, wait, someone's at my door. Knock, knock, knock. You're like, oh, it's a deed. So I don't know if that matters for anything we can talk about next week, but
It's a contract. It's a deed. It's a quitclaim deed from one of my nasty contract for deed files.
That's
and I know I haven't made it a priority, so it's definitely my fault. But man, those files are just. I'll get to them eventually.
They're the ugly stepsisters.
What'd you say?
They're the ugly stepsisters of your portfolio.
Yeah, I've got 2 of them that are okay. I've got one in Chicago I need to deal with. Anyway, it's all good stuff. It's all a learning lesson. Hopefully we make money on them since I had a $4,000+ learning lesson in Ohio in the last 2 weeks.
And in case anyone, go ahead.
We lose money. It happens. You can't win money on every one of them. Well, I guess it's not really winning. You can't earn or make money.
Right.
Win money sounds really bad. It's not like I'm spinning the wheel.
I was going to say, the wheel of
print off a tape and throw a dart and be like, I'm buying that one no matter what. We should actually do that. Let's do that.
Oh my gosh, that would be one of the greatest pieces of show content I can possibly think of. Oh,
we should actually. I think that's what we have to do, and we'll put it down. I got it. A dart deeds.
Dart deeds, something like that. Dirty deeds in the dart. Anyway, we'll figure out what we'll title that. That's a good one. In case anyone is wondering, you weren't crazy if you missed a Science of Getting Rich, a Sauger, as I've been calling it, episode last week with Mr. Woods' travel situation and what have you. We weren't able to really get that out. There will definitely be one coming out this week, which I'm excited about. So no, you didn't go crazy. You will see that if you've been enjoying those as much as I have, which is fantastic. Any last parting shots aside from what's happening next week?
You know what? Happy Valentine's Day. If
that's right.
Don't have someone to love yourself. Nobody loves me more than me.
Got to treat yourself. That is accurate. You got to make sure. You got to do the self-love. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Go get maintenance, whatever that means for you. A little massage action, mani-pedi, whatever. Nice dinner. Treat yourself.
I like it. Have a little walk outside in nature. That could do it.
Oh, very nice. I do like that. Very nice. All right. Well, very good. If the Valentine's bit is all, Mr. Woods, I think I'll close this one out.
It's good. It's been a fun week. I really enjoyed recording this week. I've got, pumped up energy. It's 3 p.m. I got a cooking class I'm going to for a little dinner time action.
I am excited about a cooking class for you. I don't know why I just get so jacked about seeing you do these, because it's something I love to do. So maybe that's what it is. I truly enjoy that particular thing. And so I'm like, man, other people that want to get into that, I'm all about that. That's good. I like that.
Incremental improvements, bro. So we're taking this, doing a little cooking. I'm telling you, this Thug Kitchen book is all vegan. It's healthy.
Thug Kitchen book. So the last 2 things I'll mention in this show. If you are looking for a fun YouTube channel, just as an idea for how different your content from a marketing perspective can be, there's a great YouTube channel called Thug Notes. It's like a Spark Notes or like a Cliff's Notes, but it's called Thug Notes, and it's fantastic. It is essentially exactly what you just said in a cookbook form, except he breaks down, the Count of Monte Cristo and 1984, and just both modern as well as classic pieces of literature. It's called Thug Notes. It's fantastic.
I think that would have been better if that was us selling notes in like all the thuggy neighborhoods. Like, who wants something in Baltimore, south side of Chicago? Here we go.
That is a missed opportunity, a definitive
marketing, guys. You can have that. Somebody,
Yeah.
whoever wants to do thug mortgage notes.
Yes. Speaking of marketing, speaking of it being a good week, at the end of this week, Mr. Woods, Friday through Sunday is my kind of standalone marketing class I'm very excited about. Essentially, it'll be 8 hours, 3 days in a row, if anybody can handle that much, 24 hours of me, essentially, breaking down just gobs of marketing goodness. So I'm very excited about that as well. It has been a good week, and yeah, it'll probably be the last time. Maybe I won't say the last time, but it has definitely been it's been a tremendous amount of effort to get this thing where I wanted to curriculum wise, and I did not think it was going to be that hard. I should have had a better expectation, or just proper expectations for the work it was going to take. But I'm really excited about it, and anybody that's going to be a part of it, I think, is going to get a ton out of it. So very jacked for that.
You mean like most things in life? Unfortunately, it's taking you more time and been harder than you thought it was going to be.
Well, yes, literally yes. It's not that I didn't think it was going to take any time or any work, but the thing is, and I don't necessarily feel for anybody or anything like that, but like taking stuff that is either second nature to you or just tips or tricks or techniques or ideas or whatever that you have gleaned from a decade's worth of effort into something that you just completely take for granted, right? Like you just don't, I don't even think about things. It's, I go to sit down and say, okay, we're going to do a module on this thing. Right. And I go to start breaking it down and I'm like, oh, well, that's way too big a chunk. I got to bust that. They're not going to, so it's been interesting. Definitely doing that, understanding the concept of, who was it? I don't know if it's called, and I'm probably totally going to butcher it, but it's the Feynman technique from Richard Feynman, where essentially he would just, the reason why he was able to be such a tour of force regarding so many different principles and so many different practices is because he would just break things down into like that, just quintessential like kindergarten level, understanding of things. And if you couldn't teach it, you didn't really know it, that type of stuff. And it's been a ton of fun. And, I'm interested. I'm very, very interested to get the feedback. It's gonna be good times. By the way, it should be good, and it'll be good. It'll be good. So, anyway, this has been a good episode 111. Thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of this week's episode.
What was a palindrome episode? We didn't even celebrate palindromes real quick. Race car. Wow. Mom. Dad.
What star rats, I think would be yeah, there you go. I would say pour one out for palindromes, but of course Mr. Woods is not currently, and neither am I consuming. So we'll pour out some herbal tea for all of the forgotten palindromes. Tea, bro.
Zen green tea. Get centered.
Thank you so much for being a part of this week's episode. If you have not already, head over to iTunes and give us a rating, give us a review. It helps us out tremendously. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, including those Science of Getting Rich episodes and all of the other reading episodes to come. If you have not already, also head over to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe over there. We're going to be putting some really great content over there. We upload every episode over there. It's a better way for you to consume the show. Be sure to check that out as well. And as always, remember to tell 5 other people you know this week about the Note MBA podcast. We'll catch you guys next week.
Happy Valentine's Day. Lots of love to you.